welcome back everyone to another great conversation. And we ended last time, and after we stopped recording, we both had something in common that we thought this would be a good topic for us to talk about today. So welcome back to another conversation with Greg. And today we're going to talk about software conversions. So how are you doing today, Greg?
I'm doing great. It's actually nice weather. It's fall, so and I'm excited to talk about this topic.
Yeah. So we got to the end of our conversation and we were kind of talking about you are willing to try new things in your practice. You like new technologies, but with it comes good and bad. So why don't you get us up to speed on, we'll kind of compare our stories about you've done a practice management software conversion and why you did it and how it went.
Absolutely. So I converted software from a server-based to a cloud-based software, and the biggest reason I did it was because we went from one location to two. And when we went to two locations, we realized we had two databases, and so they weren't talking to each other, meaning that, like I said to you earlier in the previous one, my two offices are about 20 minutes a drive apart. So if a patient A wanted to go to location B, we had to make a whole new chart and everything, so to take x-rays, or we'd have to transfer all the data. So it soon became tedious enough. We started to explore other options. And my father's an electrical engineer. Him and my mom were my first patients since dental school. And when I first went into practice, my dad was very interested in what we did in dentistry and how we integrated electronics and everything. And one of the things he was always interested was, he was like, "Oh, you're still on server?" He's like, "Oh, you're still on this kind of software?" And actually, he had always said, like, "You're on very antiquated software." He's like, and as time went on, my dad used to always tell me, as soon as you go to the cloud or you guys do something with the cloud, you should go. He's like, this is not the greatest place for you to be. You went to dental school, not IT school, to understand this.
Huh.
So sure enough, like I said, about 5 years ago, I made the decision, like, no, we got to do this, not just for the practice, but for the sanity of our patients and our staff. So
Mm. So it's funny because before we started, I was talking about how I just recently spoke at a veterinarian event. And I thought dentists were way behind in technology. But from what I understand, veterinarians are even worse. 70%, something like that, of vets are still on a server based PMS, or they call it a PIMS in veterinarian. So I think we're moving forward in dental, but I do think that there's a lot of people who are still on a server-based versus cloud-based practice management software. So can you talk about, besides sharing charts, what are the benefits you've seen? What are the reasons or the things you were kind of checking the box when it was going to a cloud-based versus a server-based software?
So, and before I say that, the veterinary thing, I think that's awesome,
That they're
and
behind us?
well, not that they're behind us, but just that to compare different industries, I think
Yeah.
that's a great thing. And, just to tie in changing practice management software, if you're thinking about, even if it's server-based or not server-based, the one thing I'll say, and I'll say this in a dentistry analogy, it's like having braces or orthodontics. You're going to be happy you did it, but you'll never want to do it again. And we all know people who have gone through orthodontics twice because for whatever reason, their bite didn't mesh. So same thing with software. I know offices that have done it more than once and they're like, I never want to do this again, but I know I have to do it. So I just want to start off by that because I know you guys, some of you listeners out there are going to say, there's no way I'll ever do it. But I use the orthodontic analogy as that's kind of how it feels about changing softwares.
Well, and for those of us, because we both laughed that we had both been through this, that's why we want to talk about it. But for those listening to this, that's why it's so important to do your homework. Like you're not just flippantly making a decision to switch softwares because the practice management software is the backbone to your practice. So you want to make sure you do your due diligence when you are considering a software conversion because it is a big thing. What are the benefits you've seen from, or why is a cloud-based software better in your mind than server-based?
So the first thing is remote access. Being on the cloud, I can see and check things from for the practitioners that need to look at x-rays, patient charts. If a patient called me on the weekend or if I'm at a conference with you, Laura, I can say, oh, you know what? I can see patient X's chart via my cell phone or a laptop. Also, not just me, but I mean, you don't have this problem, Laura, because you're in bright and sunny San Diego, but I live in Winterfell of Boston, Massachusetts, and we have this four-letter word called snow.
Ugh. That's why I moved to San Diego.
Exactly. And so why I bring that up is sometimes in the wintertime, we have snow days and we have to contact our patients. Hey, Mrs. Nelson, we're going to have to cancel your appointment with us. And we're not going to be able to make it because of the snow, but I'm happy to reschedule you. Now, when we were on server based, what we would do is obviously we watch the weather report and we would print out our schedule the night before and bring
Ugh.
home all the phone numbers and my front desk would be ready to make calls in the morning, depending on how many inches of snow we got.
Mm.
But now that's gone. So you can probably
Actually,
imagine that.
I'm gonna jump in real quick on a quick story that you brought that up. So I used to have a practice in Maryland. I was married to a dentist and we had our practice in Maryland. And so we would have snow days. And then we moved to San Diego and we were open maybe a year or two and we had fires in San Diego. And so we had a lot of people having to evacuate. We had a lot of people having to go pick their kids up from school early. And so it was like the day before or the night before, I was trying to decide if we were going to try to open the next day or not because there were so many communities affected by the fires that I texted my team and I was like, I made a decision. Tomorrow's going to be a snow day because I was just like, I'm just calling it, right? I don't want people to be stressed about their kids and all that. And my team started texting me back and they're like, what does that mean? What do you mean tomorrow's going to be a snow day? And I was like, okay, I'm calling us closed tomorrow. Like, we're calling the patients, we're canceling tomorrow. But they literally didn't know in San Diego what a snow day meant.
Yeah, that's why I call it so I've been around the country, so that's why I'm always sensitive about that. That's why I call it the four-letter word, but that
Yeah.
begins with S. What do
Yeah.
you mean? I'm like, no, no, snow.
That's so funny. So how long ago did you do a software conversion?
I did the software conversion back in 2021. So yeah, about a little less than 5 years now.
Okay, cool. So, and we did a software conversion. I mean, we're talking years ago now. And the reason we did it, and you can actually speak to this now because I'm not as up to speed on all of the different technologies out there in PMS world. But the reason we did it, there was a multiple reasons. One of them was because we had to bridge our digital X-rays to the software we were using, and the doctors wanted more of a better integration. So do you find, and I don't know, but is there better integrations? Does it depend on the PMS? Is it more cloud? Does it cloud-based make it easier or not? Or is it, how does that work when it comes to like looking at the different softwares that you're potentially considering?
So I would tell you that most of the cloud-based software are going to integrate with most things.
Mm.
Why that is, it's written in more modern language. So to dummy this down a little bit, old server-based software are usually written in C++ or some sort of base software. The best analogy I would give to our listeners out there, it would be like me teaching you, Laura, Latin, and you and I are going to completely, talk in Latin, but then nobody uses Latin anymore. And then we're going to go out there and teach this whole entire course in Latin, and then people have to translate. Now, we all know when things translate from one language to another, it doesn't 100% translate. So being someone who's from my parents immigrated from Taiwan, we have certain idioms and things that we say in Taiwanese that when you translate the word for word in English, it doesn't translate well.
Right.
And so for that same reason, same with server-based softwares, what they have and what works then worked in those times, right? And then like you said, when you went from one software to another and you wanted to have everything without bridges, what happens is you're kind of putting lipstick on a pig because you're trying to mask what the base software doesn't have by putting something like a bridge. And it's very seldom that you have something where it has a base where it integrates with everything because we said this in the last episode, things are constantly changing. The one thing we can guarantee, there will always be change and things are always going to evolve. So
Yeah, and I think that it's been a while since I've done this, but with cloud-based software, it can be updated as it needs to be updated and as there's changes, where versus we don't have to like download something new on our server or to go into the hardware to like change things because it's all on the cloud. So it just makes things more real time. I mean, I remember back in the day when I had to do this is a different subject, but when I had to do an insurance update in our software, I had to kick everybody out of the software and then I had to put floppy disks in. If you're young and you don't know what that is, look it up. But floppy disks where you like one at a time, and that's how we updated things because that was the only way to get the updates into our software.
Well, I'm glad that you bring that up because that is actually the other benefit of going to the cloud. It's Fred Flintstone if you're on the server because you have to have a backup. So when I
Mhm.
say Fred Flintstone, that's actually what my IT people, they're like, oh, it's so antiquated because you have to back up whatever is in your server on somewhere else. And so you either have a hard drive or you have to have somewhere where you migrate it to so that if you have a fire or some sort of accident, you have all the data backed up. When
Right.
it's in the cloud, it automatically does it. That's on your provider to do so. Different companies have different methods of doing so, but for those who do have servers, still, I would actually recommend you to actually test your backups because you may think you're doing the backup correctly, but you don't want to find out the hard way that, oh my God, it wasn't really backing up correctly.
Exactly, exactly. All right, so when you actually did the software conversion, one of the reasons I think a lot of people roll their eyes is there's a few reasons, but one is like because they tell you a lot of times all of the data is gonna transfer. So you're like, "Oh, I'll just turn off one software one day, and the next day we'll turn on the new software and everything will convert." I don't know about you, but for us, everything did convert into this field called memo, and everything got dumped in there, and it made no sense. We had to copy and paste and move things. So and it might have gotten better over the years. How was your experience with that when it came to data transferring over?
So it was okay. Now, when I say okay, it was okay.
Okay.
Was it a magic wand, like, like, I Dream a Genie, which boom, done. It was not like that. Equally, the biggest challenge I wanna tell everybody is actually your staff, is their attitude about it. Because what happens is, I'm already telling you, whenever transition you have, you're gonna have some sort of hiccup. You're gonna have some sort of thing that didn't translate correctly. Now, is it everything? It's small things? Now, when I say okay to you, Laura, it was okay. Like our balances transferred over, our charts, our x-rays, everything, some of the formatting on some of the notes and everything it just didn't look the same. Now you could read it, but you know, what I mean is like the capitalization and how it was formatted just wasn't as clean. So it wasn't easy to read because again, what we talked about, it translated from Latin to English or Latin to French. So some things didn't really, or it had like weird symbols, but it was all there. So that's why I used the word okay. It was okay.
Okay. Okay. So when you were going to make the decision to do the software conversion, how on board was your team? Did you talk to your team about it? Because we both know the outcome of what we're going to talk about here. But like, how was the team? Did you just come in and say we're switching, or was everybody kind of pushing for this, or was there any resistance along the way?
So, there's two different ways to approach this. There's, I'm the boss, I own the practice, we're going to do this, and you're going to all listen to what I have to say. And I think I said that to you the last episode. I learned the hard way at an early age in my career. Like, that's not the way this works. So, actually, I had a meeting with my team, especially the leadership team, and I said, hey guys, I've noticed that this is actually pretty time consuming and there's a lot of errors being made. Do you think there's other solutions? I knew there was, but I was asking more questions and so some of them were like, "Oh yeah, I heard there's other things where you could have everything in a one database." I'm like, "Oh, well maybe we should spend some time researching." And so I said, "Let's reconvene in a month and see what we find." So I involved them into this whole process. There's that whole old saying, tell me and I'll forget, teach me and I'll learn, and involve me and I'll always be part of it. Right. So that's kind of what I did. I was like, look, I want you guys to be part of this and I want you to be part of the whole solution. So it wasn't just we have three choices and I was going to make the choice. I said, look, let's go through it. Tell me what the pros and cons are. And let's go through this together and we'll make the decision together. Truth be told, we narrowed down to three companies. And I thought we were going to go one way, but then when they came to me, they're like, no, we like this one. It looks easy to use. I'm like, okay. I said, if you guys are on board, then we're doing this together. Now,
That's awesome.
that's one thing, but I have a big team and I think you'll probably say the same thing to me. I'm curious what you'll say, but I had 26 something employees. And I think I've said this. I always say to people, it's the problem is not the problem. The problem is your attitudes towards the problem. And
Mm.
so what happened was, as we went through this, some people are like, "Oh, we shouldn't have done this," or, I'm like, "You guys were part of this." But it was good because as a result, they were protecting, like, "Oh, no, we can get through this." But over the course of it, I did lose a couple of team members. They just were like, and my feeling was they weren't 100% on board anyways. They were just kind of going with the flow. But my question to you, Laura, is did you lose anybody in your transition? And, how did you handle it? And did you have those same experiences?
Yeah, actually, it's funny that you bring it up. I actually speak on this a lot. So, change is hard. Even if we're all for it. Like, you know how you get up on, I don't know, January 1st, you're like, I'm gonna lose weight. And you're like, great. And by January 5th, you're like, oh, wait, I have to go to the gym every day. I have to not eat sweets. Like, that doesn't sound as good as January 1st. So I had the same thing. In fact, I remember one of my employees when we were looking at our new software, we had the trainer in and she's just like, this is amazing. I'm so excited. And then, like, day 5 in the new software, I asked her, how's it going? And she's like, this is awful, right? Because you're basically working on the two softwares for a while. And like you said, we're trying to find all the notes. But that wasn't the employee that I had an issue with. What I actually had an issue with was I had a junior office manager who was the manager under me at the practice, and she had been in dentistry for a long time, and she was the go-to, knew it all. Everybody came to her. She was the expert. Well, the problem is when you do a software conversion, the first day, week, or month in the new software, everyone's basically brand new because we're all learning the software together, unless somebody's worked it in the past. The problem for her was she never made mistakes before because she was always the expert. Well, as we're learning the new software, she was making mistakes just like other people, like we're putting things in the wrong place, whatever. And I would say, hey, it looks like you made a mistake here. Remember the trainer told us to do this? And she'd say, I didn't do it. I didn't make the mistake. It must have been somebody else. It must have been Greg who did it. And I'm like, no, you had to do it. You were the one who met with the patient. And it got to the point where I sat down with her multiple times and she just couldn't accept failure or making mistakes because she was always the expert up to this point. And it got to the point where I ended up letting her go. We both cried. We were, I knew her kids and everything, but she had hit a ceiling because she couldn't break through it of saying, yeah, I made a mistake. I was wrong. I need to fix that. And even to this day, we're still friends. And she said our office was the best office she ever worked in. And she learned a lot from that transition in life. But it was the software that conversion that kind of spotlighted her issue of not being able to admit she made mistakes.
And knowing that, let me ask you this, would you have made the decision any different?
Not at
That
all.
Right. So it's kind of like the orthodontic analogy. You're still glad you did it. You just
Yeah,
never want to do it again.
yeah, exactly. How about you? You had some transition, and like you said, these are probably people that weren't on really in it anyway. What was your major issue that you had with employees?
So a big of it- a lot of it was attitude towards change, like you said. That was a big one. But for me, because again, I have two locations, and during that time when I did it, I had the wonderful time of managing this during COVID. Now,
Mm,
you may say, "Oh, COVID, that's great," because you weren't as busy and you probably could do all that. And there was positives of it. Okay, let me tell you the negatives. The negatives were it was hard for us to have like full on staff meetings because we were still sort of social distancing. We did a majority of the training via Zoom calls and Google Meet calls, and also a lot of it was done through text and text chain groups. Like we had a lot of chat groups. So because of that, I mean, communication was difficult, not just for doctor to the team, but to patients. It's like, hey, we integrate new software and this is what we're doing all throughout. Cause I felt like during the pandemic and even so, I mean, I think we're 5 years post pandemic now or 6 years. The way we communicate with each other has changed. And I really mean that. It used to be we could have conversations with strangers, and I could say, "Hi, how you doing? Hi, Laura. What do you do for work? What do we do for fun?" I love technology. Don't get me wrong, but we're in such a technology world. We text, we send emails. The smile and that piece is not as prevalent, and so it was difficult because sometimes when people would write things like you said about making errors, like your junior office manager, if I texted you, Laura, and I said, "Hey, Laura, what you did was not correct," or I said, "This was wrong. You entered the last patient's chart wrong." How you take a tone via something that's written versus something that's said is different. There's no tonations in when you text, right?
Mhm. Right,
And so, depending on how sensitive you are as a person and how you read something, I dealt with those issues too. So, I don't, again, curious if you had to deal with some of these things because those were things that are like, well, I read the same sentence as you did, but I didn't see it that way.
right.
Right.
Well, and I can imagine, like, I was thinking when you said you did it during the pandemic, I was thinking, "Oh, that was the best time to do it," because the practice management software runs the backbone of the practice. There's not many major changes you do in the dental office where it affects everyone on the team, right? If you change some procedure in hygiene or doctor, like, that's a department, but we're talking about a practice management software. Going paperless is another example. When we went chartless, like, that affects everybody because it's the hygienist, the assistants, the front office, and so everyone's a little bit more on edge. Everyone's doing double work, so I think the communication part of it makes a lot of sense of where everybody's a little stressed out during this time, you know?
And then I don't know if your office is like mine, I'm pretty sure it is, multi-generational, okay?
Mhm.
So I have boomers, I have Gen Xers, I have millennials, and now recently, I have, Gen Zers too, right? And so having multi-generational team, just like a multi-generational family, your way of communicating is different. Not to generalize, but typically, boomers like to have phone calls, and they like to meet face to face.
Right,
Gen Xers are more flexible. They can do either, but they still like to be a little bit more face to face. And then millennials and Gen Zers, text, messaging, email, what have you, right? I learned that as I was like, I called you. Why didn't you pick up? Oh, no, just text me.
yeah,
I was like,
that's how
oh,
I
okay.
am, even though I don't fit that category, but yeah,
Right.
I'm that same, right.
And that's why I said to you, I think when you and I first met, Laura, that's what we said. I'm like, "No, I'm good with text, just text me." I'm like, "I'm fine with
Yeah,
it." But I
exactly.
have to adapt because I do work with a lot of millennials and Gen Zers, and I'm okay to adapt. But I do say that, like, I've seen the difference in how different generations, and it's not just generational, cultural, and also just personal. Some people are extroverts,
Right.
they're energized. I think, when you and I met Laura, I mean, I'm like, "Hey, how you doing?" And I have friends that are introverts, and they're like, "Sometimes I wanna punch you in the face." I'm like, "I know." 'Cause you
Well,
just
I think too it's about the subject and the topic. So, I wouldn't have a difficult discussion with somebody via text, right? Like, I wouldn't recommend firing somebody via text or but and so when you think about software conversions, that's a big undertaking, and we are challenging people to, learn new software and change the way they operate, even if people do prefer texting or prefer just like there's still the importance of sitting down and actually having conversations, which leads me to my next question about this. Did you shut down your practice was shut down, or how much did you invest in the training? Like, how much time did you give your team to really learn the software?
glad that you asked that because I was gonna give some tips about that. So I was 100% on board to changing. I'm like, "Look, we already made this decision, guys," and again, as much as it hurts my pocketbook, I said, "We are shutting down for 2 weeks."
Wow.
The first week was the actual conversion, and we used that time for all the training, the online modules. The second week wasn't a full shutdown. The second week, I would call it a soft opening. What I said to them is like, "Okay, that second week, we're only putting patients that we like."
Mm,
Everybody has veto power, meaning, and why I let everybody had veto power is because we all know there's patients that the front desk loves, but the back clinical are like, "Oh my god."
yeah.
And then vice versa. There's patients that the back loves, they're like, "Oh, they're awesome." Oh, no, they every time they come out the front, they complain or they always show up late or what have you, right? So I said, "I want that second week to be our easy week." And it's supposed to be patients that we know that know, like, and trust us, and that when they come in, you're like, "Hey, so happy to see you." Not, "My god, I
Yeah.
might have to
It's
come
been
up."
6 months already.
Yeah.
Yeah.
"Oh my god, I might have to call out sick on Monday," right?
Yeah.
We all have those. So, and we also, not only was it that, we also booked extra time. So
Mhm.
now, as I say this to you, especially the doctors that own practices, you're going to say production, production, collection. I know. I can't sit here and tell you there's some magical thing that I made more money because of it. Maybe long run. I mean, I don't have that data for you, but For me, it was more the transition to so that it was a positive experience as much as I could make it, and, like, it was my commitment to me and my team that, like, "Look, guys, I'm 100% in on this. Not only am I paying to do all this, but I'm also willing to take our production time so we get this right."
Exactly. I actually just saw a friend of mine who's a dentist in or was a dentist in San Diego. He's now in LA, and we were both at DS World, and I said, "I still tell this story that happened to him years ago." So, we did our software conversion, and it went really, really well. We shut down for a week. We did couple days for the conversion and then training with the team. So, we were closed for the week, and it killed the dentist. They were like, "A week?" And I'm like, "Trust me," because we have a lot to convert. And then it went really well after we got through the basic beginnings that we were talking about. This other dentist who's a friend of mine was converting to the same software, and he said, "Will you come in and help us with the software conversion?" And I'm like, "No, I already did my office. I'm not a consultant. I don't come in office. I'm not going to do it." But I kind of did this, what we're doing videos. Here's all the things I learned. Here's the suggestions I have. Well, I saw him like 3 or 4 months later, and I said, "How's everything going with the new software?" And he's like, "My team hates it." He says they don't like it. Everyone's unhappy. I had somebody quit, like this whole thing. And I'm like, "Well, did you do all the things that I suggested?" And he's like, "Well, kind of. We didn't shut down at all for training. They literally converted on a Friday, Saturday, all the data, and on Monday, they opened for patients. So they had a trainer in the office trying to train the team as they were seeing patients coming in, as the team is learning the software, as we already talked about all the issues that happen all at once. And I'm like, no wonder your team hates the software. They never really got a chance to learn it. So this is going to go through for all of our things going forward on every software, every technology we use. If you don't allow your team a chance to really learn it, when they're in the thick of the day of the operations of the patients and stuff, they're gonna hate it or they're not gonna use it because they didn't get the chance to really train on it.
And I'm glad that you brought that up, Laura, too. I'm someone who, when it comes to technology, I usually pick it up very quickly. So I just snap, okay, let's go, let's run. And I've had it multiple times, friends, colleagues, staff members. They're like, not everybody learns like you. And I'm like, I had to always remind myself that too. They're like, you need to give some other people time to catch up. Otherwise, you're going to be rolling this train by yourself. And, even now, as I say these to you guys, these tips, I still make that mistake sometimes. I'm like, I was
Ah,
like, I always have to look back and be like, oh, did anybody fall off the train because I drove the train too fast?
right.
So that's another thing for, especially for those that are very quick learners or like just like to go. You have to have checkpoints to remind yourself, like, hey, you know what? I got to take a pause because you know, if you wanna go that saying, "If you wanna go fast, go alone, but if you wanna go far, go together." And so I had to remind myself I have that quote written on my phone every now and then, so I can just remind myself, "I wanna go fast, but I wanna go far." That's m more important to me.
Right.
So
Well, and which leads us to kind of the final thing, which we were talking about before we got on, of where we are now with with AI, basically, and how AI is going to help in so many regards, but really with this. And there's 2 points that I want to bring up, and then I'll throw it over to you. One is that when it comes to, I was with the veterinarians with the practice management software, and they were talking about how AI is really helping now with mapping all the data so that when you do a software conversion, all of the information's going where it's supposed to go. And so hopefully this makes it easier for anybody watching this in the future that your software conversions go better because of AI. And then the second thing is I lean into AI when you're talking about, Greg, about going further with others. If I feel like I'm running too fast, if I can see people like glazing over, like I'm trying to talk about something and they're not getting it, I'm going to AI and I'm outlining the steps. I'm writing a check sheet for them. I'm having it write descriptions for me of all the steps so that I can give it to different personality styles that maybe don't run as fast as I do, but they need the checklist or they need the descriptions, and AI can do this for you like so fast. So as you are learning new software, or as you a new thing, handing it over to someone else, use AI to help kind of transition that bridge between the way you see it and the way somebody else might see it.
absolutely, all the different AI out there, even the ones that we use not in dentistry, but just
Yeah,
like ChatGPT.
right.
It really I mean, I said that to, my office manager the other day because I used to be the person that before AI and the internet, "Hey, my computer's not printing," or "My thing is not connecting." What do I do? Oh, well, wait for Dr. Wu to come here because he'll finagle with that or help us with the software. But now my answer to them is use ChatGPT
Huh?
because it will give you line by line. I actually am convinced because they'll even say to you to make sure it's plugged in.
Huh?
Like that's how simple.
Yeah.
Right, because that's the most common thing, right? And then it'll say, "Reboot the computer," just to make sure the handshake didn't get messed up. So,
Yep.
so I can only imagine I didn't go through that, but I can only imagine the software conversion is much smoother now because with AI and again, when I did it, going to the cloud, I would say I was not necessarily the first adopter, but still an early adopter. So what I joke about is, the early adopters, we're the ones who go first because we're the ones who screw everything up. So then we can be on a podcast or on a video, and I can tell you about everything that's wrong and what all the mistakes I made. Right.
Exactly, exactly. All right, well, on that note, do you have any other thoughts for anyone of mistakes that you did make or suggestions or advice for anybody who might be considering a software conversion?
So one of the things I would tell you for those who are thinking about it, if you are going to retire in the next 5 years and you're going to move on, maybe you don't need to do a software change, because maybe it's the next person's thing. But if you're in this for the long haul, and when I say that, you're going to be practicing for the next 10, 15 years, the reality is whatever software you're on, you have to ask yourself, are they going to be around in 10, 15 years? Is that technology going to be around? Is server based going to be around? My guess is it may still be there, but maybe not. Think of how quickly things have changed in dentistry. We went from traditional wet impressions to digital scans. I mean, I'm of the generation that we quit dipped and, developed x-rays. And then we went to digital x-rays within my generation, paper charts to digital. So I'm going to end with this, and I'm curious what you would say, Laura. Where do you see things going in the next 10, 15 years? Because I really think in the next 10 to 15 years, we're going to all be in the cloud, or we should be.
Right. Yeah, it's funny because in the last 5 years, I've seen so many softwares joining our industry, coming into our industry, and I thought as an office manager, and I was like, "Why do we need another practice management software? Like, we already have 3, 5, 7, and there's more and more coming," right? But I think that people are coming into our industry thinking of it outside of the box. We've been in the box for so long, server box or whatever, and now they're coming at it from outside of the box. So, where are we going to be in 5 years? I don't know that I can predict that, but I do know that we have business people and tech people who are coming into our industry who are looking at our industry and saying, you guys could be doing this so much better. You could be doing this so much differently. And so, definitely being open to it because things are changing, like you said, and they're changing faster than ever. So, but that being said, we don't want to always be changing. We don't always want to be doing the next best thing. So, now that you're a few years into this, I'm happy with your software. Are you doing what? Are you happy that you made the decision? It's good.
Yes, my team's happy with it. There's no perfect software out there. Let's just admit that. So every software has room for improvement. The softwares that you want to partner with, and that's one of the benefits of the cloud is, like you said, it's easy to update. I don't have to shut down or anything. They run the updates overnight when I'm sleeping. So I didn't even know when they update. They'll like make announcements on the practice management software and say, "Oh, we ran new updates. Here's what's new." Cool, that's nice.
Well, and that's it too, is finding companies and working with companies that are also regularly doing updates, making their software better, trying to find ways to make our lives easier. It's not plug and play and we're done. Everything is improving. And if you're working with the right companies that are also looking for ways to improve, then it's a win-win for you and your team. That was awesome. If anybody wants to reach out to you, your information's below. If they want to know specifically what softwares you looked at, what did you think about pros and cons? Is it okay for people to connect with you, DM you, whatever on social?
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm happy to consult on software changes or AI things, all things integrated. Just like Laura said, though, if you want me to physically be there, you may have to pay me a little bit, but I would consider it.
Awesome. Well, good. Okay, so we're going to keep going through different areas of the practice, different softwares, different technologies that Dr. Wu has in his office tried, all the successes and the things that he learned from it. So thank you for sharing, going back in our history and talking about the days that we did this. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, always fun.